We can envision some amazing products we want to build for you, and we don't know how to build them with the future PowerPC roadmap.
And now it's time for a huge leap forward for the Mac. The Mac is transitioning to our own Apple Silicon.
In 2019, the Macintosh was encountering a series of critical limitations, including overheating, high power consumption, and inconsistent performance, especially on the Pro models. Apple needed a change, and not just any change, a big one. They needed a fundamental shift in the architecture inside the Mac. It wasn't a simple task, since Apple had relied on Intel's chips for over a decade. But throughout those years, they were learning, adjusting, and as a consequence created their own solution, the Apple Silicon. This new era began with the M1 chip, and it effectively revolutionized the Mac. The main advantages of M1 weren't just its statistics. It was far better than Intel in day-to-day use. For example, it gave Mac much faster, in fact almost instant awaken time, and 2 times longer battery life. But even if we compare basic stats like CPU or GPU, which are essentially the brain of your computer, Intel wasn't cutting it here as well. M1 was a success, but Apple had to pay the price. Every major software, even browsers like Google Chrome, relied on the CPU architecture Intel provided. M1 changed that structure. Therefore, apps had to be adapted for a completely new platform. This made the transition significantly more complex, but ultimately, it was worth it. But the true power of Apple Silicon was how it handled the memory of your Mac. In the Intel era, data had to travel back and forth across the motherboard. In the M1, the memory is on the chip itself. This means that a smaller amount of memory, such as 8 GB, is significantly more efficient at handling active applications and files than 16 GB on Intel-based system. This unified architecture was the primary advantage and the secret behind why Apple's creation consistently outperformed Intel in almost every category. But M1 was only the beginning. The true test of Apple Silicon would come when it moved from the basic MacBook Air to the most demanding professional machines on the planet. It was time to scale the monolith. The M1 was a triumph for the average user, but the tech world remained skeptical. Critics argued that while Apple Silicon was excellent for browsing and light office work, it would crumble under the pressure of professional high-end workflows. To silence the skeptics, Apple needed to scale their architecture to new heights. In late 2021, they did exactly that with the introduction of the M1 Pro and M1 Max. These weren't just faster versions of the original chip. They were massive expansions of the Apple Silicon potential. They didn't only increase basic things like memory or battery life, but they optimized the laptop for very complex tasks, like 3D rendering or editing a 4K film. But this was only the beginning of the era. With the release of the M2 series, Apple proved that their success wasn't a one-time event. They focused on refining the efficiency, pushing the limits of basic machines like MacBook Air so they could outperform most high-end Windows laptops. The M2 consolidated Apple's position, showing the industry that they could maintain a consistent annual cycle of significant power increases without the heat or noise of traditional processors. The true peak of this era arrived with the M3. With this chip, Apple managed to shrink the internal components to a microscopic level that the rest of the industry was still struggling to reach. The M3 wasn't just about raw speed, it changed what a laptop was capable of doing. For the first time, high-end gaming and complex visual effects, things that used to require a massive, expensive desktop with loud cooling fans, could now be done on a thin MacBook. It brought professional-grade graphics to a device you could carry in a backpack. By the time the M3 series was fully established, the debate was over. Apple had successfully become a clear leader in the industry. Now the real goal wasn't just to win the market, it was to build the future. And that future has a name: the M5. While the industry still struggled to catch up with the M3, Apple was already moving to the next milestone. They weren't just building a faster computer, they were building a machine optimized for the next decade of technology: artificial intelligence. The secret wasn't a new invention, it was the neural engine. Apple had been hiding this dedicated AI brain inside every chip since 2020. At first, it was a minor detail. Today, it is the most important piece of silicon in the world. This leads us to the M5. The M5 is the final realization of the monolith. It moves AI away from the cloud and puts it directly on your desk. By processing complex data locally, without a need to send your data somewhere and giving you more control over it, this chip offers a level of speed and privacy that traditional computers simply cannot match. It isn't just an upgrade. It's a total shift in how we interact with machines. The M5 is no longer just a chip. It is the new standard for the future of computing. The transition is complete. The era of the monolith is here.